Caleb, a junior in the fine arts program at Northwood University, was, to put it simply, gay. He was also in love with his roommate, Ethan, and had been for 3 years. Ethan, however, was a fortress of heterosexuality, with a particularly intense aversion to gay men. The campus rumor was that a traumatic encounter with an older man in high school had left him with a permanent phobia. Just last week, a freshman had confessed his feelings to Ethan and had been verbally eviscerated, sent running in tears. So Caleb had resolved to bury his feelings, letting them fester and die in private. But fate had other plans. The dorm was empty, a rare pocket of silence in the bustling residence hall. Seizing the opportunity, Caleb quietly opened his laptop to a bookmarked website he kept for just such occasions. He slipped on his Bluetooth headphones, checked that they were connected, and with a flutter of anticipation, pressed play. Nothing. The video played on screen, silent and inert. He tapped the volume key, nudging it higher, then all the way to maximum. He murmured to himself, wondering if his headphones had finally given up. It was then that a furious voice sliced through the air from behind him. A voice that demanded to know what exactly he was watching. Caleb's heart seized. He froze, then slowly swiveled in his chair to meet a pair of eyes blazing with rage. His whole body trembled, the laptop nearly tumbling from his lap. It was Ethan. Caleb's gaze darted around the room, unable to meet the furious stare, and he stammered a question about why Ethan was back so early. Ethan narrowed his eyes, repeating his demand to know what Caleb was doing. A thick sense of dread washed over Caleb as he scrambled for a plausible lie. He mumbled that with the upcoming economics midterm, he was just reviewing some audio lectures. The lie had barely left his lips when Ethan held out a single white earbud. The silence in the room was suddenly absolute, so profound that the drop of a pin would have sounded like a gunshot. From the earbud, which was still paired to his laptop, came the unmistakable, intimate sounds of 2 men. Caleb's blood ran cold. He remembered borrowing Ethan's headphones just a few days ago. He was caught. Ethan let out a short, contemptuous laugh, asking if this was the kind of material he studied for his exams. Sweat beaded on Caleb's forehead as his mind raced for an explanation that would never come. Ethan's next question was a direct hit. He asked if Caleb was gay. Caleb's head dropped, his gaze fixed on the worn carpet. For the first time in 3 years, he was admitting his sexuality to someone at this school, and of all people, it had to be the one he loved. The silence stretched on. Terrified Ethan would discover his secret feelings, Caleb spoke first, forcing a casual tone. He rushed to assure him that while he did like men, Ethan had nothing to worry about. He wasn't Caleb's type at all. He even patted his chest for emphasis. For some reason, this declaration seemed only to deepen the icy chill emanating from Ethan. He sneered, his voice dangerously low. He said it was for the best. He didn't care who Caleb liked, as long as it wasn't him. The thought, he added, was disgusting. As Ethan turned and walked out, Caleb finally allowed himself to breathe, the relief quickly soured by a profound wave of despair. It was a rejection, even if it wasn't the one he'd feared. He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. He remembered their first meeting, a chaotic move-in day. The art department's dorms had been full, so he'd been placed in the business school's residence hall. Ethan had been the first person he met, effortlessly lifting Caleb's heavy suitcase, his smile bright and genuine. Caleb had been captivated instantly. An unlikely friendship bloomed. Ethan and the other 2 roommates, Big Mike and Dave, were all finance majors, their academic lives a world away from Caleb's art studios. Despite his quiet nature, Caleb tried to fit in. He joined their late-night study sessions in the common room, their pickup basketball games on the quad, and their marathon gaming nights. He was terrible at sports, but Ethan was always patient, never annoyed, coaching him with a gentle focus that made Caleb's heart ache. He wasn't sure when the crush had blossomed into love. It had been a gradual, inevitable sunrise. He knew Ethan was straight, aggressively so. He never expected anything. He had guarded his secret so carefully, only for it to be ripped out into the open under the worst possible circumstances. In the days that followed, Ethan's attitude became arctic. Ethan had a sensitive stomach and often skipped breakfast, a habit that worried Caleb. For 3 years, Caleb had made a point of grabbing an extra bagel and coffee for him on his way to his own early classes. Friends joked he was Ethan's loyal puppy. But that morning, for the first time, his offering was rejected. Ethan didn't even look at him, stating coldly that Caleb didn't need to buy him anything anymore. Caleb tried to smile, the gesture feeling brittle on his face. He started to mention Ethan's stomach issues, but was cut off. Ethan said it was his own business and had nothing to do with Caleb. Not wanting to push it, Caleb just nodded and walked away, a stinging sensation behind his nose. That evening, Big Mike lit up their group chat. A new smokehouse had just opened on the main drag by campus, and he proposed they go check it out. Dave was immediately on board. Caleb sent an enthusiastic emoji. Ethan remained silent. When Big Mike called him out directly, a reply finally appeared. He said they should go without him. He had plans. Big Mike wondered aloud in the chat what had been up with Ethan lately, noting he'd been distant. Dave speculated that he must have a girlfriend, pointing out the most damning piece of evidence. Ethan had changed his profile picture. Caleb's heart clenched. He stared at the new icon. It was a cartoon drawing of a fluffy white rabbit, clearly one half of a matching set. The old picture, which had been there for 3 years, was a photo Caleb had taken. It was an action shot from a basketball game, capturing the powerful silhouette of Ethan as he went for a dunk. Ethan had loved it. Now, even that small, shared piece of history was gone. Caleb had always known how popular Ethan was. At 6'2", with a sharp mind and an athlete's grace, he was the undisputed star of the finance department. Girls and guys alike were drawn to him. Over the years, many had confessed their feelings, and all had been turned away. Caleb had often wondered what kind of person could possibly capture Ethan's heart. That night, he found out. On their way to the restaurant, they ran into him. Standing beside Ethan, her arm linked casually through his, was an impossibly beautiful woman. Big Mike recognized her instantly. He exclaimed in disbelief, identifying her as Lydia, the queen of the communications department, and asking if they were together. Dave clutched his chest in mock agony, lamenting that Ethan had stolen his dream girl without telling his friends. Caleb knew of Lydia. She was campus royalty, admired for her looks and intelligence. They looked perfect together. He felt a familiar pang of inadequacy and lowered his gaze, wishing the pavement would swallow him whole. Lydia's bright eyes landed on Caleb. Before Ethan could speak, Big Mike made the introductions. When he mentioned Caleb's name, Lydia's face lit up with a genuine smile. She said she was so happy to finally meet him, that Ethan talked about him all the time. Caleb's head spun. Ethan talked about him? To her? What could he possibly say? A sideways glance confirmed Ethan wasn't looking at him. It didn't matter anyway. He clearly had a girlfriend now. Lydia insisted Ethan had said Caleb helped him out a lot, and she wanted to thank him properly. Caleb waved his hands dismissively, murmuring that it was nothing, just what roommates do. As he finished speaking, he caught a flicker of irritation on Ethan's face. Had he said something wrong again? Lydia suggested they all eat together, and before Caleb could protest, Big Mike and Dave had eagerly agreed. He was swept along, his stomach in knots. At the restaurant, Lydia sat beside him, keeping up a stream of friendly chatter. At one point, she picked up a piece of grilled shrimp, moving to place it in Ethan's bowl. On pure instinct, Caleb heard himself blurt out that Ethan didn't like shrimp. The table went silent. All eyes were on him. Caleb blinked, mentally cursing his stupid mouth. Big Mike broke the tension with a loud laugh, joking that Caleb was clearly the wounded party, knowing Ethan's culinary preferences better than anyone after all these years. It was true. Caleb remembered a disastrous trip to an all-you-can-eat sushi place where Ethan hadn't touched a single thing from the sea. Feeling the need to explain, He looked up and met Ethan's gaze, an unreadable, probing look that made him quickly look away again. Lydia raised an eyebrow. She asked Caleb, with his striking looks, if he had a lot of people chasing after him. Caleb was momentarily stunned. Him? Striking? He shook his head. He'd always been withdrawn, finding it easier to talk to girls than guys. The boys in his classes growing up had isolated him, calling him a sissy for his pale skin and slender frame. Ethan himself had teased him about it, saying a strong wind could blow him over. Lydia then changed tack, her chin resting on her hand as she asked curiously if there was anyone he liked. The question hung in the air. Big Mike and Dave immediately stopped eating, their faces alight with gossip. They urged him to spill, promising to help him out. The meatball on Caleb's chopstick slipped, splashing grease from the tabletop grill. He stammered that there was no one, but he was a terrible liar. His face flushed. When they wouldn't let up, his eyes darted to Ethan, a silent plea for help. Ethan's expression was a mask of indifference. Just as Caleb felt tears welling in his eyes, Ethan finally spoke, his voice firm. He told them to stop, that if Caleb didn't want to talk about it, they should drop it. The interrogation ceased. Caleb let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. After dinner, Ethan walked Lydia home. Big Mike and Dave hooted and hollered about the virtues of young love, telling him not to hurry back. Lydia, smiling shyly, tightened her grip on Ethan's arm. Caleb watched them walk away, their figures shrinking in the distance, a sour knot forming in his stomach. He told himself firmly that this was a person he could never have. It was time to let go. But his eyes betrayed him, and a tear slipped down his cheek. Big Mike asked in alarm why he was crying. Caleb hastily wiped his face, claiming a piece of dust had flown into his eye, and urged them to head back. In their room, after a long hot shower, Caleb saw that Ethan's bed was still empty. He climbed into his own loft bed and pulled out his tablet. He opened the drawing app, continuing his work on a series of cartoon-style portraits of Ethan. There was Ethan playing basketball, Ethan blowing out birthday candles, Ethan laughing, Ethan looking adorable. His birthday was in a few days. Caleb had been working on the collection for weeks, planning to give it to him as a final gift. A way to say a proper goodbye to the past. He'd decided he would talk to the housing coordinator next week about a transfer. Living here was clearly making Ethan uncomfortable. He put on his headphones and lost himself in the art. He didn't know how much time had passed until he drew the final stroke. He checked his phone. It was nearly 1 in the morning. Big Mike and Dave were fast asleep. A sound at the door made him jump. Ethan was back. Caleb ripped off his headphones, killed the small lamp by his bed, and pulled the covers over himself, feigning sleep. He wasn't sure why his heart was pounding. A tall shadow fell over his bed. The heavy scent of whiskey filled the air. Ethan had been drinking. Caleb's eyelashes fluttered, but he kept his eyes squeezed shut, his breathing steady. He thought irritably that, for someone with a bad stomach, drinking was a reckless thing to do. Ethan rarely drank, usually only when he was in a foul mood. Caleb couldn't help but wonder if he'd fought with Lydia. A small, shameful spark of hope flickered within him, and he quickly stamped it out. What was he thinking? A rough texture grazed his cheek. He could feel the calluses on Ethan's thumb as it gently stroked the side of his face. He realized with a jolt that Ethan was touching him. His heart hammered against his ribs, but he remained perfectly still, terrified of giving himself away. His mind was a chaotic storm. 2 tiny figures argued in his head. A hopeful one insisted this was proof that Ethan must like him. A cynical one countered that the man was drunk, mistaking him for someone else. Ethan was straight, homophobic even. Then, a low murmur reached his ears. Lydia. The single word was a bucket of ice water, dousing the last embers of hope. The cynical figure in his mind laughed hysterically. Caleb squeezed his eyes shut, forcing down the lump in his throat as the shadow finally moved away. He slowly opened his eyes, a bitter smile twisting his lips as tears blurred his vision. That night, sleep never came. The next morning, Big Mike gasped when he saw him. He asked if Caleb had been pulling an all-nighter, remarking that his dark circles were worthy of a panda. Caleb mumbled an excuse and escaped to the bathroom. It was the day of the university's spring fling, and he had promised to help his friend Leo at the Animation Society's booth. Leo was his best friend, one of the few people Caleb had met during an off-campus landscape painting class sophomore year. He knew everything about Caleb being gay and about his hopeless crush on Ethan. Leo was gay too, which was why Caleb had felt safe confiding in him. When he arrived, Leo thrust a costume into his hands, urging him to change. It was a black and white maid outfit, complete with a pair of fluffy rabbit ears for a headband. Caleb hesitated, but for Leo, he'd do it. When he emerged, Leo's eyes lit up. He declared it was a perfect fit, laughing as he admired his handiwork. The costume, combined with his features that people had always described as delicate, made his gender ambiguous. Leo tasked him with drawing people to their booth, convinced his current appearance would be a huge draw. Caleb thought he was just being kind, but as soon as he stepped out, a crowd formed. People asked for photos, complimented him, and asked for his number. He stood frozen, overwhelmed and unsure how to explain he was actually a guy. Then, a voice he hadn't heard in years cut through the chatter. A voice that sent a chill down his spine, plunging him into an icy abyss of memory. The crowd parted, and he was face to face with a familiar smirk, the same malicious glint in the eyes. Mark, the boy who had systematically bullied him in high school. The first boy he had ever loved. A cruel joke he'd later learned. His confession of love had been twisted into a spectacle of humiliation. He had become the freak, the disgusting queer in everyone's eyes. He could still feel their stares, hear their whispers. Mark had approached him first, confessed his own feelings, only to later reveal it was all a bet with his friends. He'd said that holding Caleb's hand made his skin crawl. The aftermath had been a blur of deep depression, therapy, and eventually, a transfer to a new school district. Mark leaned in, his voice a venomous whisper, asking if Caleb had forgotten him. Caleb flinched away when Mark reached for his hand, slapping it away and yelling at him not to touch him. Mark just laughed, unfazed. He taunted him, asking what was wrong, reminding him how much he used to love holding his hand. He looked Caleb up and down. He remarked that Caleb seemed to have really leaned into playing the part of a woman, wondering if this was how he lured men now. The crowd of onlookers grew. Caleb tried to turn and leave, but Mark grabbed his wrist, his grip like iron. Caleb struggled, telling him to let go, but his strength was no match. A new voice, sharp and familiar, ordered Mark to let him go. It was Ethan. He shoved Mark back, his face a cold mask of fury. Mark sneered, asking who he was and what business it was of his. Ethan pulled Caleb behind him, one large hand protectively on his lower back. He looked Mark dead in the eye, his voice dripping with challenge, and said his relationship with Caleb was much closer than Mark's could ever claim to be. Leaning against Ethan, the faint scent of mint and clean laundry filling his senses, Caleb felt a profound sense of safety. Mark's eyes narrowed. He spat out Caleb's name, promising he'd find him again, before melting back into the crowd. The onlookers dispersed, but a burning gaze remained fixed on him. Ethan's hand was still on his back. Caleb quickly stepped away, thanking him. Ethan's response was clipped, that it was what roommates do, but his eyes never left Caleb, intense and searching. Caleb swallowed hard, a knot of fear tightening in his stomach. Ethan asked who that guy was, noting how scared Caleb had been. Not wanting to excavate that ugly chapter of his life, Caleb shook his head and claimed he was just an old classmate, then turned and fled. He told Leo everything. Leo listened, his expression growing serious. He asked if Caleb was still sure about moving out. Caleb nodded. He couldn't stay there, not with Ethan's homophobia. Leo stroked his chin, a thoughtful glint in his eye. He asked if Caleb was absolutely certain Ethan was straight. Caleb sighed, mentioning Lydia, the campus queen. Leo had a plan. He leaned in and whispered it in Caleb's ear. Caleb was skeptical, but Leo was confident, slapping his chest and guaranteeing it would work. That evening, back in the dorm, Caleb sent Leo a text. A moment later, his phone rang. He played his part, ending the call with a soft, "You get some rest too. Good night, babe." As soon as he hung up, Big Mike and Dave descended on him, their eyes wide with curiosity. They teased him relentlessly, demanding to know who had captured their quiet roommate's heart. Caleb stole a glance at Ethan, who was staring at him intently. Their eyes met for a second before Caleb looked away. He told them it was new, that he'd tell them more when things were official. As his friends cheered, the atmosphere around Ethan dropped several degrees. His voice was tight with an unnatural calm as he remarked that there was nothing to be shy about. Caleb felt a shiver run down his spine. Ethan sounded like he wanted to bite him. Leo's plan was to create the illusion of a new relationship to test Ethan's reaction. It seemed to be working. The conversation stalled. As the other guys tried to smooth over the awkwardness, Ethan abruptly stood up, grabbed Caleb by the arm, and dragged him into the attached bathroom, the lock clicking shut behind them. He slammed Caleb against the door, his eyes bloodshot. He hissed Caleb's name, asking him just who he thought he was. He demanded to know who the man on the phone was. The fury radiating from him was terrifying. Through the door, Big Mike's worried voice called out, telling Ethan to calm down. Ethan ignored him, his glare burning into Caleb. He sneered, his voice dripping with contempt, asking if Caleb just enjoyed being beneath another man. Something inside Caleb snapped. The words, coming from Ethan of all people, were a betrayal he couldn't stomach. He fired back, his own voice shaking with rage. He said yes, he liked men, so what? He reminded Ethan that he had never liked him, so why did he care who Caleb was with? He threw Ethan's own words back at him, asking if he wasn't disgusted by it all. Ethan froze, stunned into silence. Then he let out a harsh, bitter laugh and said, "Fine. You're really something, Caleb." He wrenched the door open and stormed out. Big Mike and Dave stood in the doorway, their expressions pained. They'd heard everything. It looked like the move would have to happen sooner than planned. Caleb took a deep breath. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice hollow. "I'm gay. I'll move out as soon as I can." Big Mike was the first to speak, waving a dismissive hand. He told Caleb it was no big deal. Dave chimed in, agreeing that in this day and age it didn't matter. They asked why he thought they'd find it disgusting. At their simple, unquestioning acceptance, the dam inside Caleb broke. Tears streamed down his face. They fussed over him, telling him not to cry. Ethan didn't come back to the dorm that night. The next day, Leo called triumphant. He said this proved Ethan was interested, calling him a classic case of a deeply closeted man. For the next week, Caleb made himself scarce, timing his arrivals and departures to avoid Ethan. A cold war had descended upon their room. Whenever Ethan was there, he was sullen and angry, radiating an energy that made the air thick. But Caleb noticed that whenever Big Mike or Dave teased him about his new boyfriend, Ethan would inevitably make some loud noise, dropping a book, knocking over a water bottle, disrupting the conversation. During one gaming session, his temper flared so intensely that his online opponents complained. Big Mike asked him if he'd been dumped, and Ethan's face darkened as he told them to shut up and play. Leo's plan moved to phase 2. The following Saturday, Caleb got ready for their date. Big Mike whistled, commenting that he was dressing up for his boyfriend. Caleb smiled and confirmed they were going to the amusement park. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Ethan watching, his face impassive. Downstairs, Leo was waiting. He greeted Caleb with a loud "babe" and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. Caleb tried to pull back, but Leo held firm, whispering that Ethan was watching. Caleb glanced up at their dorm window and saw him there, a dark figure against the glass. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second before Ethan disappeared from view. Caleb thought he saw a flash of panic on his face. At the crowded, sun-drenched amusement park, Caleb expressed his doubts that Ethan would actually follow them. Leo, handing him an ice cream, was certain he would. As it turned out, it wasn't Ethan who found them first. It was Mark and his friends, who cornered them near the Ferris wheel. Mark's eyes raked over Caleb with a slimy grin. He taunted him, asking if he'd found a new boyfriend, his voice full of mock pity. His friends snickered. One of them commented that Caleb was prettier than most girls. Mark suggested that since Caleb liked men so much, he should entertain all of them for an evening. That was it for Leo. He lunged forward, his fist connecting squarely with Mark's jaw. The ensuing brawl was a chaotic mess. Leo, though trained in martial arts, was hopelessly outnumbered. As Caleb moved to help, a familiar figure exploded into the fray. His heart stopped. Ethan was here. He was a different person, a vessel of pure rage. He tackled Mark, pinning him to the ground and raining down punches with brutal efficiency. Blood poured from Mark's mouth. Ethan didn't stop. Terrified he would kill him, Caleb rushed forward and grabbed Ethan's arm, screaming his name, begging him to stop. Ethan paused, his chest heaving. He looked up at Caleb, his eyes red-rimmed and blazing. He growled that Mark deserved it for what he'd done to him. Caleb froze, asking how he knew. Without another word, Ethan pulled him into a crushing embrace, holding him so tightly it felt like he was trying to merge their bodies into one. Caleb could feel him trembling. He patted his back, murmuring that it was okay, that it was all in the past. Mark and his friends scrambled away. Leo gave Caleb a knowing look and a thumbs up before discreetly making his own exit. Ethan showed no signs of letting go. Caleb sighed, gently asking if he could release him. Ethan finally loosened his grip, but kept a hand on his arm, leading him away from the crowds. They found a quiet grove of trees. Ethan finally spoke, his voice rough. He said that he knew what he was about to say was long overdue, but that he'd done a lot of thinking. He stared at Caleb, his gaze so intense it felt physical. Caleb could see his own reflection in Ethan's dark eyes. His heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of his chest. Then Ethan said the words, "I'm in love with you, Caleb." Caleb's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He finally managed to stammer, asking how that was possible. Wasn't he straight? What about Lydia? Ethan looked confused for a moment. He asked what Lydia had to do with anything. When Caleb brought up their relationship, Ethan ran a hand through his hair in frustration, realizing the misunderstanding. He explained that Lydia was his cousin. After he'd discovered Caleb was gay, he'd had a crisis. He had been confused and terrified by his own feelings. Hearing Caleb insist that he wasn't his type had ignited a strange, painful anger in him. So he'd asked Lydia to play along, to pretend to be his girlfriend, hoping to gauge Caleb's reaction and sort out the chaos in his own head. It all clicked into place. Ethan gave a bitter, self-deprecating laugh, his eyes shining with unshed tears. He admitted he was a fool for taking so long to understand his own heart. Caleb had never seen him so vulnerable. It was heartbreaking. He stepped forward, closing the small distance between them, and wrapped his arms around Ethan's waist. He told him he had a secret to confess to, that he was in love with him and had been for 3 years.